All right, first thing I like to do is open up the rotor box, set it down underneath where you're going to be working. It's nice, it's kind of like a little containment for dust, things you drop, fluid if you're doing a brake fluid service. So overall it just keeps things more contained and clean. I really like to do things very clean. So, all right, step one, grab your 12mm and you need to loosen up where the brake line is going through. You can see that's this line goes through to this 12mm right here. It's going to give you more movement out of that. So shouldn't be terribly tight. Crack it loose. I'm using power tools. I suggest you use power tools, but word of advice: never start with power tools, never finish with power tools. If that makes sense. I'll explain later. So always break it loose with a ratchet or something so you know what you're dealing with. Boom, there you go. Like I said, good little containment spot, set things up in order which you do it. That allows that to move around. Next, you're gonna loosen up the caliper bolts. These are the slide bolts, that's what you're gonna loosen up. Those are also 12mm. Grab your wrench, sometimes give it a little smack, done. Almost like you're an impact gun. Or you can just pull on it. Whatever works best for you. I like smacking it. Be careful when you smack it. That is your palm, so you don't want to damage those. You can kind of let that hang. The brake line does a good job. It's pretty sturdy on this one. Pull your new pads out. These aren't terrible looking on this side. As you can tell, got some life. You might be wondering why we're doing pads and rotors. On the driver's side, did go metal to metal. Now you wonder, how did one side lose all of its brakes and the other side pretty much keep all of its brakes? A lot of that is lack of lubrication. The slide pins on that side were a little sticky. So, all right, next step, you're gonna remove the caliper bracket itself. That's held on by two 14mm right behind it. It's held on by two 14mm. There's one right here. There's one right here. These shouldn't be on amazingly tight. I mean, they're 14mm, so they're probably somewhere between 25 and 45 foot-pounds. That's not a whole lot. Whenever you're taking something apart, be cautious as to what is where. On these, you're also gonna have some shims. Make sure we don't lose these on the spindle itself. So these should be on here. See, they're just little shims. They sit on there. Shouldn't have too much issue with them falling off, but just keep that in mind. Now that we got that off, we're gonna use our containment area as a workbench. Gonna pop these off. Use the new hardware if you got the new hardware. If you didn't get new hardware, make sure you use a wire brush to get those nice and clean. On a lot of boxes, they're gonna give you multiple sets of hardware because these pads work for multiple cars. So be careful and look at little details like this one. Look at this box, is kind of indented. And you wanna look for things like that, how they mount on, and make sure it looks identical, which it does. No special way to pop these on, just make sure they're on and against where they need to be and they feel like they're tight. There's no process behind it. All right, turn these a little bit. See how this one? Lubricate these slides, very important. This is what actually helps the bracket to slide. So lubricate them one at a time because you want to put them back exactly where they go. Putting things back where it goes is a good way to keep things consistent. Don't change variables, even small ones like this. I love Silk Glide. It's got to be one of the best lubricating compounds out. I really like this product. You guys might disagree. Get a little on there. Boom. Not too much, not too little. Again, that simple. This is probably one of the most overlooked steps. This is probably one of the most overlooked steps in the entire brake job, is cleaning and lubricating these slides. That's gonna pretty much ensure that hopefully your pads wear out evenly, slide well, squeaks, all that kind of stuff. Boom. Nice and lubricated. Again, right in. Next, you know, I have hit or miss opinions on this. Let me know what you guys think. Lubricating where the pads go. I don't put lubrication actually on the pads. I put lubrication where the pads go. So start with a little something like that. You just want a little bit, you don't want a whole lot, and then just spread it nice and evenly. Doesn't need to be globbed on there. You see, it's just a thin layer of lubrication. And after you're done, you're probably gonna have a little excess amount on your finger. That's fine. Get rid of that. Like I said, you don't want too much on here, because that will collect dust too much. So nice and lubricated, good to go. Now we're going to get the rotor off. Again, there's different ways to do this. I like using my impact driver, 98% success rate. Sometimes I do have to use the impact screwdriver. Takes them off nice and easy. Apply a good amount of pressure on that. You don't want it to start stripping out your screw there. Before you actually open your rotor, please make sure everything matches. Set it on top of each other. Make sure the diameters are the same and everything looks the same. That'll ensure that you don't get caught with any weird stuff as you're coming to an end. You're not going to know the rotor's wrong until you put the bridge all and everything on. Again, I like to keep things contained. Very clean mechanic. Boom. Make sure your holes line up with your screws. You don't have to put these back in. I suggest you put these back in on a Honda, but it's not 100% necessary. If it's the temporary ones that go around the studs on Chevys, don't put those back on. Those are for the robots. Chances are though you want to put these Honda ones back on, but if you happen to mess one of those up, it's not the end of the world. All right. Next thing we're gonna do is compress the caliper. Now you have two options of compressing the caliper. One is your better Blue Point or some kind of universal caliper, rear caliper compression tool. This is gonna make life a lot easier. You can also get one of these less expensive little multi rear brake tools. Just keep in mind sometimes the pressure of pushing in is not applied with this. So you got to use a lot of force while you turn. Really push in while you turn with this. It's not guaranteed to not work, but it's not guaranteed to work either. This is going to be probably your best bet. So try to get one of these. If you can probably borrow it at the local parts store. Compress this. What you do, get it in to one of the little grooves. Get into the grooves and just let it be snug. You don't need to crank down on this. Literally, it can be done with your hand and the tool. Put your tool on the end of it, and you're gonna turn it clockwise like you're tightening it in. But it does not need to have a tool on it. And eventually, as you turn, it's going to stop on its own. You don't need to crank down on this either. Just let it stop and back this back up. Tighten that in. It'll work its way back in. Break it loose. Boom. Caliper is compressed. I like to think of things. So you're gonna pull out this piece of hardware as well. Put in the new one. That easy. Again, make sure everything looks correct. The size of these triangles. Everything should look the same. If it doesn't look the same, take it back and get one that does. Don't try to make it work. I don't know how many times I, myself included, mechanics try to make things work. Trying to make it work is going to bite you in the ass so hard. Put a little bit of lubrication on that. Brakes do touch that and do slide against that. You don't want it to make noise. So, just a little thin layer. Makes life easy. Everything slides better with lubrication. Everything. All right, now it's time for installation. Your rotors do come with a little coating of oil on it. So use some brake cleaner to get that off. Spray it directly on. Spray it on a rag. You can do this on or off the car. Sometimes it's just easier to do it with it on. Rotate. Boom. Done. Then you don't need to get crazy. When you do put the bridge on, lubrication on the hardware there, do not get any lubrication on the rotor. If you do, wipe it off and wipe it off really well. And what did I say about power tools? Never start, never finish. So make sure those thread on nicely, which they did by hand. No snags at all. Have your tool. Get them on there. And what I mean by never finish is always double check by hand. Your rear bolts are going to want to be pretty tight. Like I said, 35 to 45 foot-pounds. On caliper bolts, just make them tight. If you're worried about it, make them tight. Now we're going for the pad. Once again, you're doing brakes. Make sure pads look the same where you got them. This was the rear pad. Shim squealer. On the same side, everything is the same. You know, line up your pads. Make sure they're the correct pads before you bust them out of the box. I already knew these were correct, so you know, make sure they're correct. Line them up. Make sure everything looks correct when you go on. Don't let yourself get snagged with any stupid mistakes. And do all this before opening things because they're easier to take back. People don't like to take back things that have been opened, so do this before you open them. Out of the plastic. The box doesn't matter, it's the plastic. All right. Boom. You've had this already compressed, so you can slide that back on. It should go on pretty easily. Just make sure those slides are pushed down. Give it some pressure as you're screwing it on. So again, start by hand. Never start it with your power tool. Never trust the finishing rate of your power tool, especially if it's battery, because you never know if it died a little bit, it's a little less. It's changing in torque, whereas air is pretty consistent. And double check. By hand, nice and tight. Last but not least, do not forget your brake line bolt that goes in the back. Position that back up. I don't care what kind of bolt it is, I always double check by hand. Especially when you're doing brakes, you're dealing with people's safety. Take them seriously. They're not the hardest thing in the world to do, but take them seriously. Just make sure you double check things. It doesn't take long to double check. And that's it. Both sides are done. Do the other side exactly the same. When you're done, make sure you press your brake pedal a few times. It's going to go to the floor a few times. Press it till it's nice and stiff, as hard as you can. Just make sure you give it a good press. If you're doing rear brakes, pull the e-brake a few times. After you've hit the brakes, everything like that, then check your fluid level, make sure it's still good. And this one you can see sitting right there below the full line, work fine.